Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Don't let your decision paralysis demon keep you from watching something great this weekend. Subscribe to ScreamShare, the newsletter that serves up a 5-minute breakdown of the best horror available on streaming. I'll have essential weekly movie picks covering new films, classics that you need to catch up on, and a movie that's always streaming for free. So subscribe now, and you can even be part of some frighteningly fun watch parties we're putting together that'll let you be part of the conversation. So click in the link in the show notes or go to screamshare.beehive.com. That's screamshare.beehive.com, and make sure you whitelist your welcome email so you can get all of the latest news and updates. And now the body count continues. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, diet time is here. That's right. We're talking about Grindhouse Planet Terror on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton. I'm coming to you once again from rural Texas. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And as always, there's only one person I trust who numb me, send me to sleep, and then give me a shot so good I'll never see her again. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
Oh, don't mind me. I'm just standing here with just random body parts. It's just slowly falling off of me with an audible splat.
This was brought up in the Discord just yesterday. And I said, I watched this nearly 30 minutes ago. So it's very visceral, the amount of falling body parts that occur in this movie.
It is goopy.
I've recounted over the years, I think, my experience with watching Grindhouse. I saw it at the same movie theater that's featured at the beginning of Scream 2, the exterior of it at least. And I was so convinced that they did not have choose your seats style of a theater. And I was like, oh, we got to get there early. There's going to be a line down the block. And then it was just me and 20 people. Me, Becky, and 19 other people. How about you?
This was an opening night for me. Same thing. There was like 10 people in the theater. Now I do have a funny story. Probably about 10 minutes into the movie, a group of young people came into the theater, and they talked quietly among themselves. I figured it was be kind of stupid to complain. I was like, oh, now I'm getting the full Grindhouse experience. All I need is some dude jerking off in the back of the theater or something. But it was pretty obvious from their conversations that they just sort of showed up at the theater and said, hey, let's go see a movie, whatever's playing next. Because I don't think they had any idea what Grindhouse was, what the concept was, what this was, a take on. So there's a lot of confused, like, who is this? What is happening here? And then my favorite, I'll remember this to the end of my days. The minute Bruce Willis appears on screen, one of the young women in the group excitedly called out, Tom Cruise.
Oh dear. And then they left. Not two faces I would confuse with one another, despite their caucasity.
And then they left about 10 minutes
later. Once nuts were starting to get severed, they're like, maybe it's time to leave.
I think that wasn't a teen date night kind of movie.
Yeah. This is a weird concoction, right? And I think it is interesting to get into it, and we shall. But for the edification of our audience, I thought I might really dig into how Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino made this happen, aside from just we're making movies that made money and people would say yes to their ideas. Before we can do that, and I think we'll get into the sort of Hollywoodification of this next week, since that's when we will be doing the Quentin Tarantino half. I thought I might back this up to really, because we haven't had the opportunity to dig into even the concept of what Grindhouse is or how we qualify it now. Before we do that, though, Gina, as always, when we do anything with Dimension, I have to qualify it with stating Harvey Weinstein is a convicted sex criminal, rapist, and someone who not only used his power in the industry to force women into sexual situations against their will, but if they did not submit to him, he would use his power to drive them and who knows how many women out of the film and television business altogether. I hope that he rots in hell, regardless of whether hell formally exists. That being qualified, let's talk about Grindhouse. Now, for me, this is a concept that I didn't really know was a defined area so much. And to a degree, it's not. It's something that has a multitude of eras that change and shift what it means over the years. But my first exposure to it might have been your first exposure to it if I were to just guess. And that is, it came from Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't really find it came from Hollywood anywhere. There's been, pushes over the years to try to get it released on some sort of format. But because it culls so many clips from so many sources, and they're not really studio sources, the rights for it is an absolute nightmare. So it'll probably live on YouTube until the end of time, but you can watch it on YouTube. Right.
Yeah. It's ripped in quite a few accounts on YouTube. Some of them, decent transfers.
Yeah. So for me, it was more like helping me introduce myself to B movies and bad movies and all these things that are unsuccessful film presentations to a degree. So it's kind of hard to separate the production history of Grindhouse from one to the other, but I could absolutely kind of give everyone a formal definition of what is Grindhouse. So according to historian David Church, Grindhouse policy was a film programming strategy that theaters would use. It dated back to the 1920s, in which a theater would continuously show movies, and they would have cut rate ticket prices that would rise as the day went forward. So the earlier you got in, the more movies you could watch for a cheaper price. Whereas the exploitation film, if we're to define that, basically comes down to exploiting a particular portrayal of whatever lurid or taboo subject matter the filmmaker wanted to tackle. Or the other component is it is exploiting a hole in the marketplace. So it's appealing to a smaller audience demographic who's hungry to see themselves portrayed on screen. So we'll get to some of those subgenres as we go forward. But an exploitation film at its core relies on sensationalist advertising to really get audiences excited about a lurid overstatement of what the issues are involved in the movie. So instead of let's say, any old film that examines why these two very pretty people end up having sex, an exploitation film is about showing as much sex as you can get away with on screen.
Right, exactly.
It's what it comes down to it. It's a business thing. It's an ROI equation. What is the return on investment here? Well, you start with low budgets. You don't employ massive stars. You go to cheap locales. You do pedal to the metal on whatever subject matter is being exploited. And because the filmmakers, the expectations here are appear on screen. Literally, the threshold is it has to be a film which you show light through one end of the projector and it shows up on screen on the other. The filmmakers could either, rise to the occasion, make the most of their opportunity, make something that might get them noticed, perhaps brought into the studio fold, or it's just something that filled up 75 minutes worth of runtime. You just never know what you're going to get. Quality was not a guarantee. And Tarantino in particular has been fond of stating on many occasions that if you don't get fooled by an exploitation trailer into seeing a movie you thought would be one thing and it ended up being something else entirely, well, you just weren't seeing enough exploitation films. Now, a lot of this kind of comes up with a lot of mass machinations of Hollywood history. But previous to the 1930s, you could tackle more lurid subjects. There was a subtle creep of European transplants to America, pushing the envelope of what you could do. But the code gets installed in 1930, and any film that is released in theaters or is advertised in the newspaper kind of has to skirt around subjects that would, for no, not to put too fine a point on it, but anything that would make the straights nervous.
Yeah, you had a lot of I think there was one movie that I recall, I've never seen it, but a lot where the subject jailbait comes up.
Right, yeah.
And maybe some of the actresses were actually of age. Maybe they weren't. It's kind of impossible to tell because a lot of people were not using their real name, their government issued names to appear in these movies.
Exactly. If you want a deeper dive into pre-code and post-code Hollywood history, I cannot recommend enough The Secret History of Hollywood. It's in the same film history grouping as we are on Apple Podcasts. They're just, let's see, they're currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spots above us in the top 30. But absolutely fantastic podcast for a variety of reasons, but just so much vital information about this era of Hollywood. I cannot recommend it enough. But after the code was installed, everyone's kind of scrambling to try to figure out how to work around it. It's how you get into film noir, where gangster movies then have to start ending with the gangster dying at the end rather than being victorious. Horror movies kind of have to transplant how you do blood, how you do gore, how you deal with death. And everyone's kind of feeling their way out. But one of the ways exploitation sort of works around this is they wrap a lurid subject matter in the air of quote unquote education, and mainly in the form of finger wagging. And this is how you end up with delirious sex-filled dreck, like I think you were just talking about it, Gina, Child Bride.
Yes.
And Mom and Dad, they're kind of terrible. Drugs are verboten, but if you wrap that movie in the air of, well, these people are going to hell and you should learn a lesson from this, you get reefer madness. And this sort of education film thing works in providing audiences with the sex and drugs that they want while also moralizing at them, which makes the Catholic League feel good.
Right. So, you can still do your, it is both, shocking and titillating at the same time.
Exactly. But also with this weird air of, well, you're learning a lesson, so that's why this is all right. Now, once you hit the 50s, the exploitation itself starts to go a little mainstream because the kinds of genres that are getting engaged with are also being used on the studio side for B-movie fare. So you have a lot of sci-fi, horror, and teen movies that come into vogue, attempting to get young people into theaters with subject matters that they felt, if not dangerous, again, as you just said, they're titillating. So these are flicks that you could pile onto a Saturday afternoon double feature or a triple feature or something that let kids neck in a drive-in for 3 to 4 hours. Again, quality notwithstanding, some of these are very good films. Some of them are terrible. But there's a mixing and melding between the independent producers and studios. But really, it's the 60s and 70s when Hollywood is fully reeling from the introduction of television. It's now not just a theory. It's something that is going on across the country. Access to television has now been democratized, and the industry needs to deliver a product that you can't get at home, which meant that you had to offer something a bit more daring. And so this is when we get into wave after wave of new exploitation genres meant to shake up the status quo and make people feel like if I'm going to the movies, here's what I'm not going to get this from your show of shows. I'm not going to get this from Bewitched. You got, not that either of those are bad things. Your bikers, your bikinis, your imported martial arts fare, blaxploitation in the wake of Sweetback's Badass Song, and Shaft. You've got all the more violent Yakuza and samurai films that show a lot of blood splatter. That's okay in Japan, but felt very de rigueur here in America. Speaking of which, you've got the spaghetti westerns and their Spanish offshoots, which are kind of the same thing. Then from down south, you have mexploitation with things like the El Santo films, which are real genre bending. You've got a lot of wrestling. You've got a lot of horror. It's everything in between. And then you've got the 1-2 punch of Hicksploitation and Carsploitation. Now, if you want to know more about Hicksploitation, the place to go to is Joe Bob Briggs, who it has a very thoughtful examination of why Hicksploitation worked so well during this time period and allowed people to find a common enemy amongst rural dipshits. If you were a racist bigot, you might have had the upper hand at the beginning of the movie, but ultimately you were felled by someone coming in from the outside who would equalize the game for everybody. And Carsploitation, to a degree, is an extrapolation of that, because it really comes out of bootleggers and rum runners on the road, which is how you eventually get to the studioification of that in Smokey and the Bandit and Cannonball Run. But before that, you've got all the indie productions of like Gone in 60 Seconds and Eat My Dust and all the milieu in between there. And then Carsploitation leads to Ozploitation. Now, Ozploitation we got into quite a bit when we did Next of Kin, but specifically with Carsploitation, you have like the Cars That Ate Paris, which gives Miller the impression that I can make something like Mad Max. They're both born out of Australians being unable to drive their cars without killing people. And so there's an offshoot there. And of course, you have Canucksploitation. That will come a little bit late. That comes late 70s. And then specifically here, that's important for Grindhouse, you have sexploitation films, which primarily come out of LA. It's everyone who sees that people are making money doing hardcore porn, but I still want to work in Hollywood, so I'll do softcore. And so a lot of this is seeing how many women you could get to take off their tops, but you have to give them a job. They're either cheerleaders, nurses, teachers, and such.
Or sometimes they're in prison.
Right.
Where that allows you to get in some light lesbian action.
Exactly. And women's prisons movies are directly name checked during the course of Planet Terror. So this is by no means a definitive list of sub-exploitation genres. There are more ways for you to get information on this. And I would urge you to do that, because I think the more you know, more versed in how we got to our current state of Hollywood, you'll begin to understand. It's always been a sleazy money game to a degree. Yes, great art has happened, but almost by accident. It's, to a degree, not always the goal, but a delightful side effect.
Correct.
So we've not discussed one element here, which I think has the most to do with Planet Terror, and that is shocksploitation. Now, this is a really general term here, because when you're dealing with shocksploitation, that's where you're just dipping into anything that will get a rise out of audiences. So that can be anything from like Andy Warhol and John Waters, who never let any words like bad or inappropriate stop them from putting people, characters, and dialogue into movies that they think, they won't allow me to do this. They just fucking do it and don't ask for permission. They don't even ask for forgiveness after the fact. And then you have notable films that have a direct influence on Tarantino and Rodriguez for this project. This is by no means a definitive list, but for example, I can point to things in Planet Terror and Death Proof that are directly linked to stuff like Blood-Sucking Freaks, I Drink Your Blood, Fight for Your Life, Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, Thriller, A Cruel Picture. Tarantino himself often calls those last three kind of seminal revenge-o-matic flicks. So just, keep that in mind for next week. If you want to know more on this subject, I, once again, will always point people to Jason Zienemann's Shock Value. It's a great resource for the sort of dueling race between indie films and studio flicks that were pushing the envelope of the genre in the wake of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby, which were both released in 1968. The other Grindhouse films that kind of cause a shift in what horror would become that are covered in that book are Let's Scare Jessica to Death, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Sisters, Targets, Hills Have Eyes, Dawn of the Dead, and the film that forces everyone to change, John Carpenter's Halloween. That film, of course, led to the moment where indie and studio sides would converge with Friday the 13th, the first movie in this entire podcast history, which was produced independently, purchased in a negative pickup deal, and released by Paramount Pictures. You'd think I'd be done, but I'm not, Gina. Because here's my first grand theory of Grindhouse as a whole. Cast your mind back, everybody. I want you to remember a little discussion we had over Gus Van Sant's version of Psycho. And you'll remember that my argument for that film's existence is that it is a worthy experiment. The central question for Van Sant was, can this be recreated? Can arguably the greatest thriller, the source code for what might become the slasher film, what is, in a way, one of the biggest turning points in previous Gothic horror converting to modern day horror. I would say that Psycho 1960 is the thing that does that. Can you actually transpose that for modern day audiences and have it make sense? No, you can't. It is interesting. Rodriguez and Tarantino are basically attempting the same magic trick. Can you recreate the anything to make a buck flair of exploitation films, but with a modern movie budget and special effects and casting all your most famous character actor friends? Can you produce a modern movie with the same devil-may-care plot and character decisions that, at some point, a former ABC chief and newly installed Disney CEO Bob Iger is going to sit down in a quiet room in Burbank and watch in his screening room? Which is what happened with this. And I can't imagine Bob Iger watching Quentin Tarantino's nuts melt off. It's asking a lot. So we will cover the how this pair managed to get this film out of their heads and onto screens as a combined effort. But let's dig into Planet Terror specifically. Now that I've ranted and raved long enough. But specifically, we will be discussing this in the way it was presented in theaters as the first half of a double bill over 3 hours long that include bad prints, inconsistent sound, and super cheesy trailers. So I guess at the beginning of this, Gina, what were your initial feelings of Planet Terror before, and did that change anything watching it for the show?
I'm still gonna hold firm on my belief, and evidently, the internet being what this is an unpopular opinion that Death Proof is by far the better movie.
Agreed.
That it is. I don't know. There's a question of they haven't aged well because they were already kind of out of time.
They were not attempting to work for modern in the year it was released sensibilities.
Right. I mean,
nevertheless ours.
Particularly Planet Terror. I mean, it was basically, a take on a movie from 1975. The only thing it lacked was it does not actually have any nudity in it. It's implied, but you've got the flirting with lesbianism without actually going to the point of actually showing anything. You've got a lot of the misogyny, and of course all of it, which is the entire point of the movie, is done with a little bit of a wink at the audience. Again, actually, even more than Death Proof, my favorite part of the movies is the fake trailers. I was just cackling out loud, and even down to the fake Mexican restaurant ads, and just how unappealing the food looked, because it reminded me of, I used to go to the drive-through with my parents. And you would get the ads for, here, have a delicious hot dog. And it's this blown out, faded to hell photo of this greasy hot dog turning on a grill. And it's delicious.
The best thing I do love it because it feels so incredibly authentic. It is worn. The idea of what a salad is here's an apple and a banana in a bowl, and the worst amalgamation of salad, greens you've ever seen. It is incredibly true. And what I love most about it is the trying to evoke what it felt like, rather than try to give you the most pure distillation of what an actual Grindhouse movie is.
Right. I mean,
it's really about the vibe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be one of those proselytizing, you need to watch the whole thing all in one go, but you kind of need to watch the whole thing all in one go.
It is the pointed purpose of them to not be full-fledged narratives, but feel chopped up and feel like you're getting a little ripped off in places.
Right.
Because it's not really fully delivering on what it's promised. But that is the stated point of the Grindhouse. So that, I think, is a harder sell to get people into theaters. And I think for whatever reason, even though these two had very hot, lead ups to this, for whatever reason, people weren't willing to give it the full shot. And I think Planet Terror is the easier sell of the two. And this is where you start to see the very incremental distance in Rodriguez and Tarantino's ages. It's only 3 years. But you can tell that Rodriguez, in particular, has pulled more of his influences from a VHS stage,
right? Yes,
rather than attending, which is a Tarantino thing. And Tarantino has always been mashing up what he's viewed as, this is a more aggressive cinematic style that I want to make aesthetically. And, for all of his foibles, and the man has many, I think he's pretty good at that. Whether or not he's our greatest living filmmaker, I think I would say probably not. But I will say, at the very least, his version of film bratness was far more democratized.
Yeah, correct.
So Rodriguez here, I think, is more interested in the aesthetics of Grindhouse rather than truly evoking something that would come from that era. That being said, Terror itself is a monster mash. It's George Romero, it's Carpenter, and in particular, it's The Incredible Melting Man, a movie that scared the hell out of me when I watched it on Elvira's Mistress of the Dark TV show here locally on Channel 9. If you watch it, I would urge you to watch the MST3K version, because oh boy, it blows.
Yeah, I mean, at least get some laughs out of it. Don't try to watch it straight.
If you were wondering how could the Pink Panther theme make Patrick scared, watch The Incredible Melting Man and wonder, how did this live in his brain for days at a time? So for all its missing reels and visible scratches and broken film spokes, Planet Terror is really just a Western, but every other character is wearing TRL level booty shorts. It's just constructed with a stopwatch so that every 5 minutes it wants to present you with something that will grab your attention, whether that's an out of the box character decision or focusing for a full minute on how tiny Fergie's outfit is.
Or, just someone just getting their head blown off apropos of nothing.
It's taking you one way and the narrative goes in another. It's never worried about whether or not that makes sense. That's not the goal of Planet Terror. And as a result, what you get in the end is a bit of a mixed bag. I would say more positive than bad. It's just that it's not as fully formed an idea as Death Proof is.
Right. And I think to the point that, even though I just did it myself about 15 minutes ago, you can't really compare them. I mean, yeah.
They're very different subgenres.
Yeah, they are part of the same movie, but they're not the same movies, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think it's revealing what each segment says about the kinds of Grindhouse fare that Rodriguez was influenced by versus Tarantino. And so we'll obviously dig into Quentin in depth more next time. But for this week, I think my takeaway is that Rodriguez enjoys, that aesthetic of Grindhouse more than ever really wanting to create a pure recreation of the subjects at hand. To a degree, I think Rodriguez wants to make a zombie version of From Dusk Till Dawn because that worked. Can I do it where I never pretend it's one genre and then it converts into another? I don't have to worry about making the pivot point. It's just all from the minute go, this is a zombie movie with people's faces falling off. And so when he adds the missing reels and film burns and all that, it's more like if I made it now and it played at the time. So what you get is this kind of, it's a little Billy Jack and it's a little Day of the Dead and it's a ton of John Carpenter. Now, I don't really personally view Carpenter as much of a exploitation filmmaker.
Right.
JC obviously worked independently out of necessity, but he's really a classicist at heart. If you talk to him, he has no love for people who don't play by the rules to a degree. He obviously has talked endlessly about his love of Howard Hawks and John Ford. And you can really see the influence of Carpenter's cowboy romanticism on display here, as well as From Dusk Till Dawn. And obviously, to a degree, on El Mariachi and Desperado. But Rodriguez, I think, is pulling from three distinct Carpenter sources for Planet Terror that you can see the outline of. First is Assault on Precinct 13, because you've got the forced to work together despite you're on different sides of the various laws. It's a siege picture at points, and it contains a shocking child death. Then you have Escape from New York, because El Rey is basically Snake Plissken sans the eye patch. And then you have one unrealized project that I think we may have mentioned on the show before. Maybe we have, maybe haven't. Maybe I've just thought about it in my head too often because it's gained a lot of notoriety over the years. Have you ever heard of John Carpenter's Shadow Company?
I don't know that I have.
So very quickly, because this never saw the light of day, Shadow Company was a script that was written by a couple of USC film dudes who go by the names of Fred Decker and Shane Black. Ever heard of them? Decker would make Monster Squad and become a prolific screenwriter for hire. Meanwhile, Black would become the highest paid screenwriter in Hollywood for a full minute with scripts for Lethal Weapon 1 and 2, The Last Boy Scout, The Long Kiss Goodnight. And eventually he would transition into being a writer-director of his own material with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and The Nice Guys, to name his great movies. Less said about The Predator, the better. Also, Shadow Company was going to be produced by James Cameron and Walter fucking Hill. So a lot of tough guys who love to see violence portrayed on screen, all coming together for the story of a group of soldiers who are killed in Vietnam, all buried in the same plot around their hometown, who end up becoming reanimated, rising from the grave, and attacking that same hometown for no other reason than spite and vengeance on Christmas night. That's his kind of slug line. Black claimed that the finished script was akin to, quote, The Exorcist meets Platoon. Whether that's a combination you want, we'll never know because we're never going to get it. It all kind of falls apart around the same time that Carpenter gets lured into directing the Memoirs of an Invisible Man, which damn near killed the careers of everyone involved, except for the one career it should have killed, Chevy Chase.
Get him next time.
You would think. But enough of my yapping. Let's boogie. They call him Machete. Now, I think this is a hilarious use of individuals here. It's obviously culled together, just like what can we do with setups when we're not working on Planet Terror. But it's also, to me, not so much a Grindhouse trailer. This seems much more like 80s VCR action than anything you might get from a Glickenhaus. Does the name Glickenhaus bring anything to mind for you?
Not specific, but I know that I've seen it.
You've definitely heard of these films, but James Glickenhaus kind of launches onto the scene and sort of typifies, like, when people are watching Grindhouse fare and movies that take place in New York City, they're showing a Glickenhaus movie. Like he made The Exterminator. He made The Soldier. He made The Protector. And of course, my personal fave, which comes out in 1988, Shakedown, which is a weird fucking motion picture.
Peter Weller and Sam Elliott, I think.
That is.
Okay,
yes.
I believe I have seen that.
Shakedown's one of those things I think lived quite a bit on cable.
Yes.
And I think it's the most cable ready of Glickenhaus's career. And after Shakedown doesn't do what he wants it to do, he starts to retreat from the industry, which is a damn shame because of those sort of 80s, these two guys are going to stop this one criminal. It is really fun. It is bizarre. Weller is this odd ex-hippie and he's best friends with this burnout and they come up against corrupt cops. And spoiler alert, but this is going to get you to watch it. The ending is one of them shoves a live grenade into a private jet through the wheel well. And then he jumps off into New York Harbor and the plane blows. And like, that doesn't make sense. I promise you, none of it does.
Yeah, no, don't try to, don't come at it with expecting sense to be made.
That's Glickenhaus's like most glossy effort. Whereas what I feel like Machete is vibing off of to a degree is a little Brian Bosworth vehicle called Stone Cold.
Oh, God.
Which is a towering achievement in, does this guy have the juice to carry an entire action movie? Cinema.
No.
And of course, the answer is not quite. If you need to know who Brian Bosworth is, don't worry. Even finding out won't tell you, because I don't know that we ever found out who Brian Bosworth really was.
Renaissance man, Brian Bosworth.
Yes. Haircut and sunglasses given the gift of life, Brian Bosworth. So I think that's why when Machete eventually does make it past the trailer phase, because it's one of two films that have trailers that give birth to a real movie. In this case, two. It's mainly an excuse to show off the offbeat charm of Danny Trejo. But all the energy that I would expect from the guy who gave you El Mariachi and Desperado never fully powers Machete for a real 90-minute run to my satisfaction, unfortunately. I love that Cheech Marin plays a priest named Father Benito del Toro. Like, that's great. But I think it kind of proves my if you paint it on the side of a van and it looks cool, it's probably going to make a shitty movie. Because seeing, Danny Trejo launch behind a bunch of oil barrels that explode, and he's firing a massive machine gun from the handlebars of that motorcycle. Like, if you paint that on a van, you're like, that's cool. And then you watch a movie trying to get to that point, and it's like, well, I'd rather watch that van.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember when there was like a couple of them, weren't there? Wasn't there? Hasn't there been a?
There's Machete and Machete Kills. Yes.
Yeah, when I heard that was going to be made, I'm like, honestly, I'd rather see a full length movie about the taco business.
There is a motion picture to be made, and that taco business movie probably would not make you suffer through a very humorless Steven Seagal extended cameo.
Exactly.
So let's talk about Planet Terror. It is wild to me that Planet Terror starts the same way I Know Who Killed Me starts. And a fully clothed stripper wiggles on stage for 2 full minutes and like, isn't this titillating? And you're like, I mean, they look great, but okay, sure. Why not? But that's how we meet Cherry Darling. She's at a crossroads. She, according to her, needs a dramatic change in her life. And she's absolutely going to get it. I do love that we get a setup for a joke that will pay off later on. It lets you know Robert Rodriguez can write a script when he wants, because her boss tells her that she can't go weeping on stage all the time. It's go, go, not cry, cry. Now, we're introduced to a paramilitary force here, which features one sleazy arms dealer named Abby, played by lost Naveen Andrews. And what I believe maybe Naveen Andrews' big debut / closing credits of his movie career.
His debut and his simultaneous debut and swan song.
It's like everyone saw Naveen Andrews on Lost, like, we can make something of that guy. And then a couple of years later, like, no, I'm not sure we can. But Abby has promised Lieutenant Muldoon, played by a barely awake Bruce Willis, that he can supply a chemical that he needs to keep Muldoon and his crew alive and not transformed into incredible melting men. For reasons I cannot explain, Abby is fond of balls and travels with a jar of previously harvested balls.
Oh yeah, like particularly the male characters in this are almost, except for like the hero, are all uniformly kind of weird.
Yeah.
They all have quirks that would probably get them locked up in real life, whether in prison or a psychiatric hospital.
But to a degree, they are exhibiting that core thing that made us want to start the podcast to begin with, in that you're only going to have so much time on screen, especially with this many characters, and you're going to die at some point. So how do you make your characters stand out? You're going to make choices. And so I think for the majority of the cast here, people are making definitive choices, or those choices are being made with the goal of making their characters stand apart from one another, as opposed to just random people. Everyone's got their something as they progress throughout this film. And Abby's is that he wants this group of rando criminals to pick up 3 specimens that are now loose outside of this Texas town. And then when he doesn't get his way, he collects balls. He seems to exclusively harvest the balls of people with elephantitis. Those are large balls.
Yeah, I was going to say, are those human testicles?
I know you're going for effect. Like, no part of this is, I need the balls that this guy's been cutting off of people to be realistic. But he does have a lot of specialized knife gear for balls specifically. I'll say that. But when when Lieutenant Muldoon sort of senses that Abby is not going to deliver on restraining those specimens, nor is he going to give up all of the chemicals he needs. He decides, I'm just going to do away with you and I'm going to cut your balls off. Before he does, Abby is able to shoot the chemical tanks of that weird mist that melts people in a decision I can't. Does this help?
Yeah,
everyone.
This is our second movie just in 1 month where we've covered people dealing with bizarre, inexplicable, toxic smoke and just deal with it in really unconstructive, unhelpful ways.
This is a weird. I didn't mention it, but yes, this movie has a lot of the children energy going on to it.
I mean, could there be some influence?
I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it. They're both a big grab bag to a degree. And I think Rodriguez's grab bag is a lot bigger. You're getting a lot of random influences here.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada? Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
It is at this moment that we meet Tammy, played by Fergie Ferg, and her tiny fucking shorts.
Yeah.
I don't think shorts have ever been shorter than they are presented.
They legally qualify as underpants.
Like how she manages to walk around in them with a belt on them. The belt loop is bigger than what goes under the belt. It's a tribute to her and her physique at the time. Well done, Fergie. But wow, she's overheating me. I'm sorry, her car. Her car is overheating. And so she pulls over to the Boneyard, which is an establishment owned by JT, or at least run by JT. He actually doesn't run the land. He owns the land, rather. That'll come into play later. JT is played by Jeff Fahey, who appears here relishing every moment a camera is pointed in his direction.
Fourth Jeff Fahey movie we've covered this. We are in the end of June and we've covered 4 movies with Jeff Fahey.
We probably should not have, designated 2026 the decade of screams for our 10th anniversary when it's really the year of Fahey.
I was going to say that new edition of the Chinese Zodiac, the year of the Fahey.
Just please, someone out there, make us a Chinese calendar with the year of the Fahey on it so we can sell it in the t-shirt shop. But Fahey has a lot of advantages going on. He lives near, cattle and pigs so that he can make barbecue. And he gets his spring water from that dam over there, which you think is going to come into play. It does not. And this is where I wrote the note, Jesus Christ, this movie moves fast.
It does. And it's not even because it's just missing entire scenes.
But it is just like not worrying on explaining why people are the way they are. Everything is done through their actions and their interactions with one another. So this is where we meet Dr. Dakota Block. She is balancing phones, talking with her babysitter on one and texting Tammy on the other behind her husband's back. Her son, Tony, by the way, is playing with an action figure version of the main alien from Robert Rodriguez's The Faculty. I don't know that they made action figures from The Faculty, but he's got one. Now, as I mentioned, Dakota is married to Dr. William Block, played by a thermometer chomping Josh Brolin in full hunched over mode. And I'm wondering if you caught these vibes, but maybe it's the amount of MST3K I watch. But I swear, Brolin is trying to channel Joe Don Baker here.
Now I don't.
You don't have to agree with me.
No. I just, it simply hadn't occurred to me. But in thinking about it now, I can't say that you're wrong. What I will say is one of the reasons why I think that this movie works in layers is that, you have a lot of people who have done very good work in other movies trying to pretend that they are bad actors.
Yeah, right.
And the believability that they're bad actors is a testament to how good actors they are. if that makes sense. Like, I've never seen Josh Brolin give a bad performance, but he's terrible here because he's supposed to be. I mean, at the risk of overusing a very already overused phrase, he got the assignment.
Yes, that's a big component here. He understands the vibe of what Rodriguez is going for, and is going out of his way to present that, and to the best of his ability to fit into the mode of it. And if that means that his performance doesn't line up with Marley Shelton's, if that would be true of the film if it were made at the sort of time it's trying to evoke. So the fact that Marley Shelton is giving bug eyes throughout this and is perpetually crying.
Right, because if you think back to the kinds of movies that this is emulating, there's always, a leading lady who's giving too much, and a seasoned, older B movie actor who can barely be arsed to be there.
And whether that was what the actors brought to the table or what Rodriguez, concocted with them in concert or explicitly delineated in the script, I can't tell you. But it does show an intentionality with almost everything that happens here. I don't think there's a lot of mistakes being made on Planet Terror. This is going according to plan. And I think that is why it's hard to argue that Grindhouse is able to recreate what made those exploitation movies the kinds of films that revved Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's creative minds to begin with.
Right.
You've got a bit of a Sharknado issue here. I think they do it with more aplomb. I think these are far more successful than something.
Well, they're competent directors to begin with.
Yeah, so it's hard for them to kind of turn it off in that way. But where I think they really shine are those moments where, in essence, where you get that so bad it's good formula, where they believe in the idea so much that they're just willing to go whole hog. There's no part of them that ever pumps the brakes and goes, no. We've got to keep in mind the sensibility of the person entering a movie theater right now. They're not fucking concerned.
Right.
With that said, we now meet El Rey. El Rey is played by Freddie Rodriguez, who's, I think, channeling a couple things. We mentioned Snake Plissken, but I also think throughout this, he is directly sort of lifting George Clooney's From Dusk Till Dawn persona onto this. There's a lot of half smile head bob ER era George Clooney happening.
Yeah.
George Clooney would become a very good actor, but he did rest in a specific mode where once he got the sort of worldwide acclaim and recognition for the kinds of roles he played, he calcified in that ER mode for a lot of it for a really long time.
Including famously Batman and Robin.
We learned that Ray and Cherry have a history. She left. She took his jacket. He looked for it for 2 weeks. This is stated over and over again. We'll get back to why. Meanwhile, look who shows up. But our old pal, Nicky Cat, in the height of Nicky Cat mania, where every other indie director is like, who would work in his? Nicky Cat. He shows up with a bite on his arm, and whatever he's caught is absolutely spreading, and introduces the idea that she has 3 needles, and they go in the order of yellow, blue, and red. The needles are fetishized, and you're like, I wonder where that came from. It's Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. It's a very exploitation thing where this character has one thing that defines them, and that's hers. We cut back to Tammy's Volvo as it quits again for reasons that aren't heat related. But despite the fact that the Volvo won't work, the male gaze certainly has, as we will just look at her getting out of this car for a full minute to let us know that Fergie possesses breasts and has a butt.
And is once again, cannot state this enough, wearing very tiny shorts.
Just the tiniest fucking shorts, and is not adverse to running in a very supportive bra. She is on the run soon from some uncredible melting men, and it turns out she does not get far. When Ray encounters this scene, he soon finds himself swerving from a man in the road, and his wrecker truck does a full rollover. Cherry gets dragged out of the cab, and this is where she loses a leg, somehow not being bitten, or is she immune to the bite? I think that's what we learn, right?
Yes, there are some people who are immune to it.
Ray manages to get her taken to the hospital. This is where we meet Sheriff Haig, played by an incredibly dialed-in Michael Biehn. He also is so thrilled that someone is pointing a motion picture camera in his direction. He is going to make the most of this. Also, hamming it up as much as possible, of course, is his second in command and a thrilled to be there, Tom Savini as Detective Tolo. This is where we get into some Crystal Lake first responder type shit, because we have sleazy ambulance drivers in this motion picture.
Hell yeah, we do.
You can tell this is very Halloween 2, Friday the 13th, 4 coded. They're just like, whoever these first responders are, we should not take them as worthy human beings because of their predilections. The ambulance drivers are bringing in a ton of bodies, including 4 DOA women who were killed in a head-on collision. Just keep that in mind for another episode that might be coming up. That is the only time this really crosses over between the two movies. And also they have Tammy's body, and the ambulance driver says that how she died is a no-brainer, in the fact that her brain has been eaten out of her head. All of the makeup effects here, particularly this Tammy body, you can tell lovingly created by Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger. Like this, for as digital as this movie gets, and it gets very computerized, they show up with some real practical effects here. Like this is not, that thing redo that Universal attempted, where they made a bunch of practical effects and then replaced everything with digital CGI. They're really attempting to put as much physical stuff on screen as possible.
Oh yeah, this is a very wet movie.
Yeah, it's viscous to a degree. Block knows that Dakota was going to leave him, and to prove that, he stabs her in both hands with a yellow needle, numbing them, but is interrupted before he can hit her with the red needle. She will eventually leap out of a window, Texas Chainsaw Massacre style, to escape.
Yep.
And they're definitely evoking that character through her as a constantly crying blonde who will do anything to survive. Again, it's a mishmash. Speaking of which, once we're at the sheriff's office, we get this mini Assault on Precinct 13 sequence, complete with Rodriguez aping Carpenter on the soundtrack. So if you were wondering if I was just making that up whole cloth, like, this is definitely part of what he's drawing from. He's not trying to recreate it as much as use it as a flavor and ingredient on the whole. But Ray, Haig, Tolo, a female deputy who I don't think ever gets a name, but over the course of the movie gets more and more of her shirt ripped off. They all escape to the hospital to rescue Cherry. This is when we're treated to Ray basically being a two-eyed Snake Plissken. He just goes through with 2 knives and starts carving up motherfuckers. And at this point in the movie, I'm like, oh, this is like so much more of a Carpenter riff than anything in the formal Grindhouse canon, because you've got the Romero flavored zombie theme plus the crazies. That's a mashup. But then with Carpenter, you got a lot of apocalypse trilogy mode happening here.
Right.
Eventually, you've got killing a kid, Precinct 13 style. Every part of it is just, you can tell this is his version of what Carpenter might have done if he had this era's budget at the time he was making those movies. And you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Right. When the legitimate audience was there and not just there, for, ironic purposes or to, get a taste of what it might have actually been like.
Yeah.
When this was a, thriving genre of film.
Nicky Cat in that hospital sequence does come back as sort of a halfway big bad. He ends up pulling a Crazies move with a bone saw throughout it, where he gets right up to Dr. Block's face with the bone saw, and he manages to pull the plug out. Because Crazies comes a full 4 years later. Are they both pulling from a Grindhouse source that I'm unaware of? That's certainly possible.
Or they just the crazy thought, that's cool, let's try that.
Nicky Cat is eventually dispatched by Ray, even though he's down one arm. And then we learned that it's time to gather at the bone check. And this is where pieces start to become missing here. Everything starts to go a little sideways. We get a delayed wedding proposal between Ray and Cherry, a missing reel that explains how the zombies end up attacking the bone shack to begin with. Michael Parks appears, Tarantino fave, also father of a guy who wanted to beat my ass in college, arrives as the multiverse version of Earl McGraw. Earl does show up in a bunch of Tarantino movies. And there's also a pair of twins that are basically the Latina stand-ins for Sandra Locke and Colin Camp in Death Game. That in any way sounds vaguely familiar to you. It's because it was remade quite badly by Eli Roth in a movie called Knock Knock.
I barely remember that.
It sucks. I can't say that Death Game is particularly good. I think the best form of watching Death Game is watching like a YouTube highlight reel. It's more evocative an idea than it is a motion picture. But it is during the attack on the bone shack that Tolo gets ripped apart in a tribute to Day of the Dead, in which just parts of his body are taken off in chunks, as if he is baked cookie dough. It's interesting. The zombies have a lot of variable strength here. Again, not looking for realism from Planet Terror.
No, you should not be looking for realism from any Grindhouse movie, even though they were marketed towards the type of audience that Hollywood didn't always cater to.
Hence that exploitation era stuff. During this bone shack element, I don't know if I'd put this together, but I think this is the first time I've ever seen a zombie variant retreat from gunfire. And they do during this when El Rey is attacking and they're like, this seems bad. But then when the gunfire stops, they turn around and head back. So they have the wherewithal to understand they might get shot, but they don't think they might have more guns. That's interesting. I'm not sure that makes sense. But in their escape, which includes a mini bike, and putting Freddie Rodriguez on this mini bike, this is the point where Freddie Rodriguez's representation probably should have said, hey, Robert, can we talk about this? He's very cool throughout this. And then you put him on a tiny mini bike, and this already diminutive actor now looks far too large for transportation.
Yeah, he kind of looks like he's stolen a child's bicycle.
I mean, technically he has. It's been given to him because it's the Block's kid. But of course, Tony Block will not need it as he shoots himself in a car. Is that an accident? when he sees his dad?
I don't know, but if you look on the Wikipedia page, he shows up apparently in a post-credit scene. So I guess he lives. I don't know.
Well, Jerry has a baby. Oh, he does? Oh, that makes zero sense. That's neither here nor there. The entire group eventually is cut off at a bridge by a bunch of zombies that they don't think they can get through on their own. All those zombies are then shot by the Shadow Company run by Lieutenant Muldoon, and everyone is taken into custody at a local army base.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
This is where we stand by to get through a Quentin Tarantino scene, which is a long excuse for him to scream misogyny and eventually have his dick and balls melt off.
Yeah, this is like one of those scenes where you kind of makes you uncomfortable because it's like, I think you're having a little too much fun with this.
I understand the goal is really to have Quentin's nuts fall off his body.
Right. So,
I get that.
People, it's going to be like, yay.
Yeah. I'm not a yay. Because everything that leads up to it just makes me feel bad. It doesn't make me feel great.
I mean, you don't need to give people a reason to want to see Quentin Tarantino's dick and balls fall off.
Yes, honestly, it really doesn't, and I don't need.
I mean, he could just walk on screen and say, hey, "Oh my God, my dick and balls just fell off," and then you go like, "Yay!"
And around this time, Jeff Fahey gets shot a couple times during an escape attempt, and already Michael Biehn's Sheriff Haig took a bullet to the neck from Tolo, I might add, after explicitly telling everyone, "Don't shoot me." Of course, he gets it in the missing reel. And so finally, these two, whom we learn are actually brothers, and that Haig owns the land that JT's barbecue restaurant sits on, but JT will not share his barbecue recipe with his brother until he says, "You're going to have to take this to your grave," of which Michael Biehn promptly dies.
Going to heaven with that barbecue recipe.
And then Jeff blows up the whole thing. During this time, Bruce Willis reveals that his character killed Bin Laden.
Bruce Willis reveals that he is not Tom Cruise.
In a shocker, he is not Tom Cruise. He does not jump off a couch. But he does just get elephantitis at a certain point. Just balloons up in a way that doesn't help him kill anybody. He just gets real big. And then Abby and Ray shoot him, and everything blows up, and a whole bunch of people escaping, including Cherry's old boss at the go-go place, Skip, who we learn knows how to fly helicopters.
Sure.
And the Crazy Babysitter Twins are also part of this. Sure. Why not? They get up to the surface, and they learn that 2 helicopters are being used by this army squad to escape with all the gas that they pilfered. And so they'll have to kill their way to one of the helicopters to put their backs to the sea and defend themselves against an endless wave of zombie hordes as this disease spreads everywhere. Now, this is where Cherry Darling gets a new version of her leg, which is an M16 with a grenade launcher. And now you're about to see a 5-minute scene of why this movie was made to begin with. Because the one piece of behind the scenes tidbits I'll let loose here is the reason why Cherry loses a leg and replaces it with a machine gun at all was what Robert Rodriguez wanted to put on the poster.
Am I not mistaken that they were a couple during when he put her in this movie, were they not?
It is definitely around this time. I don't know if they're together while they're making this or together after this. Tony Block is played by his son.
Right. Yes.
So he was married previous to this. And I don't know, American cheating, look it up on TikTok. I don't know how that goes. And I really don't want to dig into Rose McGowan's past here, as obviously it's wrapped up in one of the producers who's a legit fucking sex criminal. So people make decisions.
Well, I mean, I'm not opening it up to criticizing him for whether he did or did not cheat on his wife with her. I'm just saying that, this is a, part of this is both a tribute to Grindhouse cinema and also, can you guys believe how unbelievably hot Rose McGowan is?
Yes, it is definitely oh my God, if you thought Rose McGowan was hot before, wait till you see her next to naked in this movie, in which he really tries to give you every angle of. And then when she's not naked, she's half naked with a machine gun leg.
Right. She's satisfying a lot of fetishes in this.
She's working overtime. And I will say, she acquits herself at the physical department as much as Freddie Rodriguez does. This is where you kind of see that Rodriguez had the juice to be an action film director. He just kind of knows how to make kinetic action. And he's not using all of his El Mariachi Desperado tricks here, but he knows how to link sequences together to make you go, I'm having a good time.
Right.
No one really knows how this movie ended up with the runtime that it got for its initial theatrical release, what they decided to cut out versus what they keep and what you can easily watch now. What people predominantly see as its independent version, divorced from the Quentin Tarantino half of the movie. But I have watched that other version, and I will say this is the more successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes, movies benefit from a firm editing hand.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that a movie with this kind of plot needs to be over an hour and 25 minutes. I mean, Grindhouse. One of the things about Grindhouse movies is you could watch a bunch of it at one time, because most of the time, they're rarely any longer than an hour 25.
I agree. It does suffer in comparison, and one of them was going to be the less. It's interesting what each filmmaker decides their version of that kind of movie would be and how they execute it. It is odd to me, and we'll kind of get to this maybe in the next episode, that I think of all the trailers that are shown, that two of the so-so trailers, Thanksgiving, the best Eli Roth film ever made, and just the trailer, it's better than any of his theatrical products. And then Machete graduate to full-fledged movies. But the movie I want to fucking see is Don't.
Oh my God. I love it so much. It's so perfect. It's just Nick Frost as like the weird baby man.
He's the unseen. He's the fucking unseen.
I just howled with laughter. Oh my God. It's so good.
It's incredible. When you start going through the trailer and who is in it, and part of it's you can easily identify Nick Frost, but I had forgotten that Jason Isaacs shows up for half a second.
Mm-hmm. He's basically Roddy McDowell in The Haunting of Hell House or something like that.
Yes. You've got Frost shows up as the unseen. Peg is in there as kind of like a weirdo. Rafe Spall, Mark Gatiss, Jason Isaacs, Matthew McFadden. And I'm where do I know that fucking face? And then I had to look it up. Peter Serafinowicz shows up for a second, and then Lucy Punch arrives, and I'm like, oh, this was made for Patrick, wasn't it?
I think the funniest part is that you're right, don't. And it's just the font changes, just don't.
Yeah. Again, for newer people listening to the show, once upon a time, we did an entire episode on the Thanksgiving trailer. Just because we couldn't figure out what to do for a Thanksgiving episode, and we didn't want to commit to the one Thanksgiving movie we knew we had at the time. And just the sort of cacophonous way that it builds don't, and the way it just grabs these scenes from all these movies. And then what I did not know was that Will Arnett is the announcer.
Oh my God. Really? Now I gotta go back. I gotta go back and watch it again.
That's fucking Will Arnett. It's nuts, man.
We should do an episode entirely around that.
Maybe we should. Maybe we should break that. I think we should definitely keep in our back pocket, because it is worthy of just picking that apart, of figuring out every single reference, and maybe we will it into being. Because at the time, I think we said, like, if they made this a Thanksgiving, like, maybe you could make something decent on it. I'll never know, because I will never be watching.
But it does exist.
It does exist. So maybe we can get Edgar Wright to, if you're looking for a project, this sells itself. Just bring everyone back and make this. They can all be with us. And you're telling me you're going to make a haunted house movie with Peter Serafinowicz, and you've got people bleeding white the stuff out of the palms of their hands. I'm going to show up. I'm going to come there for that. I think everyone else's box office returns from their Grindhouse movies might make it more difficult for Mr. Wright to do that.
Well, yeah. But you know what? Sometimes people are dumb.
But you can always sell them the fact that you're getting Frost and Peg back together again. I just say go for it.
Exactly.
And there's so many younger British talent that he could weave in there. Come on, Ed. For me, make this happen.
Put Michael Sheen in the Roddy McDowall role. That would be that would be so good.
I thought we would barely make an hour, and here we've been going for well over. So good for us.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts on Planet Terror before we say goodbye?
We'll get a little bit more into it when we do Death Proof. I really think that what you said made a lot of sense about, you could see the age differences a little bit in how Tarantino and Rodriguez approach their respective movies, and the
very minor but very distinct.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. You could see that kind of like boomer Gen X kind of crossover a little bit. Where
right.
Rodriguez would have been introduced more through the home rental and cable era.
Yes.
So yeah, I want to get into that more when we do Death Proof. But no, I mean, it's is it a good movie? No, but it's parodying a not good movie, and I do think it is far more competently made than Sharknado. And I think, as is always the case with these parodies, they're no good if you don't love what you're parodying. That's what makes the difference between like why Christopher Guest's movies are so good, because his satire, his parody is made with love.
And I get the impression, I don't know, I feel like this movie's it's moving so fast that when it gets to the army base and slows down so that QT can have his monologue sesh where he comes in for his day and he gets to do what he wants, it just grinds the movie to a halt.
Oh yeah, as it did in Django. I think at some point he gave up on the idea that I could act too, because like I when I went to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was bracing myself. I was bracing myself for a way he would try to wedge himself in there, and he didn't, and I appreciated his decorum.
I agree. It's one of the few times he showed it, and but then again, what are you going to do? I don't have to like the guy to like the movies.
Exactly.
I can separate the art from the artist, I think, in his response, but I also have trouble with him as an individual and choices he's made, because I don't think they would fly for so many other people. So what are you going to do? It's as long as you talk about their existence, he doesn't get away with it. And, we can still talk about what he's done. That's at least the way I'm going to go forward with it. That just about does it. I would say let's choose our own death venture, but you either become a zombie or you don't.
You either become a zombie, get shot, or you get like your brain eaten by a zombie.
You get exploded. I mean, Tolo's the memorable on-screen death. So you could get Day of the Deaded is the only real true variant that I think occurs in my mind.
I mean, I'll take it. I'll get taking my brain eaten because I want to look good in booty shorts.
Don't we all? It's the way to go. It's just, who's that hot piece of ass? And why don't they have a brain?
Do they need one with that butt?
But that just about does it. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television and pop culture on my newsletter, GinaWatchesThings.ghost.io, and I am predominantly on Instagram under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Go to screamshare.beehive.com. That's BEEHIIV.com, where I send out every single Thursday a list of movies for you to stream so that you never have to let that horror movie decision paralysis demon take hold of your weekends, not with me in charge. You can find the pod out on your socials, with the exception of Twitter. Fuck that place. Talk back to us over on Instagram or Spotify. You join us over on YouTube, even if you don't listen there. It helps spread the word of the podcast, weirdly enough. And of course, rate and review us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called these days. If you let us know what your favorite death is that we've covered on the show, I will read it here on the air. That's my solemn promise to you, the Kill by Kill listener. Go to our t-shirt shop for fun, nerdy shit. And of course, you can email us at killbykillpod@gmail.com. That just about does it for today. But don't worry, folks, the body count will continue for myself and for Gina. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
There are